Everyone, and welcome to Ful-on, your Fulham-centric football podcast. I am your host, Ash Woolford. Joining me today for what I feel will be a very quick reaction to the Everton game, and then a lot more talking about some other stuff that's going on, is AJ. How you doing, mate? Yeah, I can see the pain in your eyes, mate. I can see it. Drew, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing well, mate. Good to see you both.
Yeah, good to see you. I'm going to start with Drew. Obviously, we want to cover the game really quickly and talk about some stuff that's going on in our 20 minutes here, because I don't think anyone who's a Fulham fan who watched that game on Saturday will be remotely happy about what they saw. You were at the game. What was it? What was the atmosphere like in the stands? Did it feel as negative as it did at home, as it did in the stadium? Like, what was the general feeling around you?
It's the first time I'd been to the first time I suppose any Fulham fan really had been to Hill Dickinson Stadium. The stadium itself, on Bramley-Moore Dock, right next to a water treatment works, which is the first thing that hits you when you get off the coach. But the stadium itself, it is they've done themselves proud. It is great. It was very different in the sense of, if you compare it to sort of atmosphere when Newcastle were playing at home, it was very subdued. It was almost it wasn't they weren't it's almost like there was a lot of spectators rather than fans. The stadium itself is immaculate. Inside, the sightlines are great, but the Everton, I mean, I was at Goodison last year, and understandably they were having a really tough time. The Everton fans weren't as electric as I'd seen them previously, and again, it wasn't the best atmosphere. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't as exciting. I mean, yeah, to be fair to Everton, maybe it's because they were playing us. I mean, the Fulham fans themselves, I mean, you know, they were I mean, they were good, but I mean, it all soon evaporated. It wasn't there was an air of resignation about it. You know, it became all too familiar far too quickly, if that makes sense.
Was it really negative by the end, or was it just is it more like laughing at pain?
It was noticeable in my mind. I mean, some of the players did come over, but Cess looked really down, and Josh King as well, which are probably, bearing in mind they're two academy graduates, you could understand why. I mean, the fans were good, but there was there wasn't anger. It was more, there was an air of resignation about it.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen too many of these performances, Ash. Do you know what I mean? The thing that was upsetting, I think, Everton didn't have to do anything other than hustle and be physical to beat us.
Yeah.
That was fundamentally, that was it. But we'll talk more about that.
I think, well, for me, it's almost the complete opposite of the game last week against Wolves, where we didn't really have to get out of first gear to beat Wolves, because Wolves beat themselves. I felt like we were the same on Saturday. But we were really poor, really turgid, really easy to play against. I think that not many players on that pitch can come off and feel like they did a great day's work. I think we were way too easy to play against. I think Marco Silva got the starting lineup wrong. We'll talk about that in a second. I thought some of the subs, he got the subs right, and then got unlucky with one being injured. But our foray into the game lasted 20 minutes in the second half, and by that point, we were already way behind, playing catch up, and Everton didn't really have to, do much to get back into the game, and we sort of almost like we gave up a bit too easy, and that's a worrying sign for me. I think there's a lot of parallels on Saturday to Fulham 4 years ago, when we got relegated, in the sense of there was almost like a resigned feeling of this game's beyond us before it should have done. Whereas maybe arguably, during the better times of the last couple of years, we've always sort of fought to the end. I didn't feel like that was the case on Saturday. AJ, let's talk about some of the things we know we're really annoyed about. The first thing, obviously, is the squad that Marco picked on Saturday. He made a couple of changes that we're not happy about. He made, he reverted to having Iwobi higher up the pitch and immediately brought back the double pivoted Lukic and Sanderberg, something which I think that we're all beyond watching football of now because it does not work. How do you sort of sum up how we set up for the game and how we reacted to the situations that were going on in the game? Because I felt like both were really poor on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, the personnel for the game wasn't awful. It was how they lined up. It was immediately throwing Iwobi into the 10 as opposed to having two equally weighted distributing eights next to each other that could have played off of each other and had Berge do the dirty work. It was having Wilson constantly check back to pick up the ball early and not do much out wide. It's just the reluctance to actually build a team to be creative and be on the front foot of a football match. The double pivot works in games where we think we're not going to see much of the ball. If you've gone to Everton, regardless of whether or not they're home or not, if you've gone to a David Moyes side and thought, yeah, they're going to have more of the ball than us and we need to shape up defensively, my God, you don't know football. And I'm not saying Marco doesn't know football. Of course he does. We've seen it time and time again. But at the moment, all we're seeing time and time again is him getting the tactics and the formation and the lineups horribly, horribly wrong, and then repeating himself week after week as if like he's preparing for a different game each time. It's making less and less sense to me, and his decision making is so awkward that he may as well not be there when the whistle starts because he doesn't do anything from the sideline that's constructive to the way we set up. Look at against Newcastle. We made a change in midfield. They made a change in midfield to counteract us. They immediately knew what we were doing and countered it. Even against Everton, we made a substitution. They made substitutions. They knew what to do to counter us because we're predictable. We're readable. It's like the Everton manager. It's like David Moyes knew when we were going to make changes, but we'll get into that a bit more. As far as the squad goes, which was your question, the personnel weren't terrible. Probably could have done without the double pivot in Lukic and Berge, but if you want to play them both, give Lukic the freedom to wander forward and let Iwobi do what he does in the midfield with a bit more space. He can't operate in the 10. He needs the room to maneuver, to think, to create opportunities, to drive into. He's not Ozil who can one-touch pass into space behind. He's not a 10.
You know, I fully agree. I think for me, one of the players that's got an awful lot of criticism over the last couple of days has been Raul Jimenez. I agree with some of the criticism that he's getting, but I think there's caveats to some of the things that people are moaning about. You know, people are moaning about the fact he's never in the box when crosses come in and when chances come. No, that's because Marco Silva's got him pulling back deep in order to help win the ball on the halfway line. And 34-year-old played 4 games in 20 days, Raul Jimenez, cannot keep up with play that quickly. You know, on Saturday, we saw it 4 or 5 times where he did really well to win the ball on the halfway line. We worked the ball out wide to Kevin or to Wilson on a couple of occasions, who beat a couple of men, get to the edge of the box, look up. They see 4 Everton defenders in the box and not a single white shirt anywhere. And it's becoming a real problem for us where we seem to have this inability to get men in the box. We have this inability to create space for ourselves. And we have an inability to reward ourselves for the work that we do. Kevin on Saturday, I felt so sorry for him because 4 or 5 times he did really well to beat 2 or 3 men, gets inside the box, looks up, and no one's there. And the one good chance we created in that first half was him doing that, and then Wilson sort of slightly getting into the box and the ball sort of fortuitously dropping to him, and he sort of mishit a shot. Like it's not good enough from that point of view. I get why some people are criticizing him because he's not in the box enough, but that's because he's been asked to do stuff that he can't do. And if you want Raul Jimenez to constantly drop back like that, You need one of the wingers to be counteracting and being a forced 9 and going in behind. And they can't do that because they're being forced out wide to create space out wide. That means that someone should be in the box. That something's not right there. It's very turgid football at the moment. It's very predictable football at the moment. And one of the things that I've been talking about is that when Fulham don't think about things, we look really, really good. When there's fast passing, quick action, it works. The problem is, if you're defending against Fulham, it's really easy. Let us have the ball. Because we will think and overthink and overpass, and we'll either give the ball back to you, or it'll end up back at our centre back on the halfway line, and then we'll do the same thing again. 2 minutes later, we get to the edge of the box, and there's no movement. Everything's really slow. It's got to go back again, and that's if we haven't already given you the ball at the edge of our own box, because we do that 4 or 5 times a game too. There's too much overplaying in certain situations. There's too much, lack of movement from people off the ball. And I think half of that is because tactically we're not getting it right. And I think that falls on Marco. You look at the goals that we conceded on Saturday, they were both the 2 goals that actually stood. Shocking defending, by the way. The first one, Leno does well to get a hand on it, pushes it onto the bar. But then Anderson's got 5 players around him. Yes, he then mishits the potential to clear the ball out of the box, but he's marking 5 men on his own. Like if one of them didn't score, if Gay didn't score, somebody else was going to, because there were too many men there. The second goal, the defending is really poor. The goalkeeping is poor. Leno would have done better if he just stood still. He would have got closer to the ball, but he almost jumped early and then got lobbed. It's one of those ones where it's frustrating. But ultimately, with Fulham at the moment, we cannot defend set pieces. We look like we're not communicating on the pitch well enough, and it's frustrating. We usually finish talking about games where we give a man a match and we talk about honourable mentions. There isn't any. No one came off that pitch on Saturday with an honourable mention. Maybe Muniz, because the 12.5 minutes he was on the pitch, he looked a bit creative, and then I don't know if he's injured or he's ill. There's conflicting reports on that. He then came off again, and that was game over. And we all knew that as soon as we saw Adama Traore even warming up on the wings, it was home time. Like it's one of those things that. Let's move on talking about the game and talk about the wider issue at Fulham at the moment. And we know that the hot topic on most social media is people seem to be, are you Marco in or are you Marco out? And I don't think it's just black and white as that, right? Drew, at the moment, right, it's hard to just sit there and be like, yeah, I'm content with what's going on. What's your general feeling at the moment about what Fulham need to do in order to fix the rut that we've got ourselves in?
Ash, as you know, I respect you massively, and I'm loath to disagree with you. But a couple of things I've got to come back on. The thing about Raul, he's being asked to drop deep. I'm not sure whether that's tactical or whether he's just sitting there thinking it's the only way I'm going to get the ball. Because as AJ said, the balance of the midfield is all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Second point is you can forget about tactics and lineups. Regards Saturday, we were outworked. We were out hustled. That's it. Okay. I don't mind. Okay. I don't like losing. But if you get beaten by a technically superior team, okay, so be it. All right. If we played at the top of our game and we were playing Arsenal and they played at the top of their game, we would probably lose. And I would have no problem with that because on paper they're better than us. But let's not gloss over the fact about tactics, about starting lineups. Yeah. We lost because we didn't outwork Everton. We lost because we didn't out-hustle Everton. You made an interesting point about the number of people in the box, Ash. Yeah, especially for the first goal. Everton caused us problems because they committed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Dewsbury Hall and Grealish are obviously 2 great midfielders. But the one that stood out for me was, and I always struggle with his name, AJ, help me here. Idra is a
Idris Gay.
Yeah, he was the one that stood out to me because he was powerful and he drove the team forward. Yeah, and we just didn't match it. And I do agree with you about the Marco in, Marco out issue. And a few Fulham observers have been, and Ash, you're big on this because you've been mentioning it for the past couple of seasons. The final third of the last few seasons, we fall off a cliff. And if you look at the last 63 points available, we've taken what have we taken? About 20, something like that.
I think it's 6 wins and 2 draws in the last 20, isn't it?
Yeah, or seven. Yeah, it's relegation form. So what's happening to us now hasn't just happened this season. This has been going on for a while. And there was a snap poll run by a famous Fulham Twitter account where people were pretty much split. Well, it was a third each way on whether Silva's influence or Silva's contract situation was to blame, or whether it was other things, or it was a mixture. I was speaking to a mate of mine who's an Arsenal fan, and the first thing he said to me about the game on Saturday, he goes, Silva's not interested, is he? Yeah. Now other fans are picking this up. I mean, I watched Silva after the game, okay, and he looked lost to me.
Yeah, dejected, didn't he?
He looked lost to me. He looked like a man who was sitting there and wondering, can I be bothered? That's how he looked to me. Now, I'm not saying that he's unprofessional. I'm not saying he's not working hard. But you can't fool all the people all the time. You can't be talking about the future when you're counting down the expiration of your contract. I mean, the famous example is Ferguson when he announced he was going to leave Man United, and they completely fell off a cliff. Yeah. I am not saying that the Fulham team have mailed it in or phoned in the season because their manager's leaving. What I am saying is I'm starting to wonder whether their manager knows he's leaving and he has started to phone it in. And ultimately, is that Silva's fault? Maybe, but this comes back to something that we talked about. And AJ made the point when we were talking about the season preview, when we were talking about contracts. Yeah, we knew that his contract was running down. Yeah, we knew we were going into a final season with him as potentially a lame duck, where people will be sitting there thinking, why am I going to listen to you? You're going to be gone in 12 months. And I'm not saying that the Fulham players are unprofessional. I'm just saying they're human. Yeah, and I completely agree with you, Ash. I don't think it's so simple, but I think Silva. I mean, we can't do anything about the Khans. I mean, Shad Khan came out a couple of weeks ago and basically said, our culture is to always work with our sons. Basically, nepotism rules. Tony Khan's not going anywhere. Yeah, the recruitment's not going to change. It is what it is. Yeah. So, Silva needs to either understand and swallow it, and focus on what he can affect instead of banging on about what he can't. And by that I mean recruitment. We all know it sucks. Yeah, and referee decisions. There's something fundamentally wrong, and I think you're right, Ash. I don't think it's one thing. As for Silva, do I want him to go? No, I don't, because I think who are we going to replace him with? But I think he's got to be he has to be very, very honest with himself. And if I was the management, i.e. board level, I'd be saying to him, you either commit or you go, because I'm afraid to say to any Fulham fan listening to this, we're in a relegation battle. I've seen this. I've been going to the cottage now 40 years. So I know when it's wrong. I know when it's wrong. Okay. And if you're not committed and you're not all rowing in the same direction, and I don't believe we are, then it's only going to end one way. So anyways, sorry, mate.
No, I completely agree with you, and I completely understand your points you're making on, fight and determination in games. And you know what? Worse teams will win matches when they fight together. You look at Sunderland this season, right? Not only have they recruited well and they're playing really well with the fight and the determination, they're not beat. They're not beat. Look at them on Saturday against Sunderland, against Arsenal, where they concede late, but then have the bollocks to get back into the game again because they're fighting for each other and it works. At the moment, the determination and the fight on the pitch, it isn't there. It looks like we're beat, and that's almost before we start games. We look like we're a bit defeated, and I don't think Marco Silva's situation helps for multiple reasons. Because I also think that Marco Silva doesn't help in that situation where, you don't know where his head is sometimes. You don't understand. He a couple of weeks ago he was losing his temper about fans pointing out the fact that Alex Iwobi looks better in the middle of the pitch than he does out on the wing. And then he immediately puts him in the middle of a pitch. He looks really good in the game, and then as soon as he starts to look good, he moves him out again. And it's almost like he doesn't dare be questioned on certain things. Look, AJ, we know that Marco Silva's been hamstrung, right? We know that the last 4 transfer windows have been really poor. We haven't recruited a striker since Mitro left, really. When Rail came in, I don't think he was brought in to be Mitro's replacement. I think he was brought in to play alongside him. And then it sort of went a bit haywire, and he's been left to do a thing. We know Muniz is still young-ish, growing into playing in the Premier League properly. As good as he looks, he's still a bit, loose here and there. Marco Silva's been hamstrung by the people above him, but the people above him aren't going to change, and that's the problem, right? What would you do? How do you feel right now about Marco's his situation as it stands?
It's a bit of a loaded question. It's a tough one. Marco's situation is what it is. We can't change what's already been agreed in that there's a contract in negotiation. It'll be dealt with at a later time. Both, apparently, the club and him want to focus on finishing the season first before they cross that bridge, which I think is a daft way to work as a football club, especially one at this level. But we can't change what they've decided. So we'll put that to one side. The recruitment's done. We can't do anything till at least January, and it's likely not going to be very good again anyway because Tony Khan does it and he only works 6 hours a year. So it means very little. So we take recruitment out of it. So then we've got, right, how can this manager that's supposed to be a very good tactician work with the players that he's got in a different way? Well, we've seen him in the past work on a counter-attacking basis, be quick, be direct. What's changed? Why isn't that happening anymore? Why aren't we being more creative like we used to be? Why aren't we taking teams to the sword like we used to be? Why are we going up against David Moyes' team and being scared of outrunning the midfield that we need to play a double pivot after winning a game with an entirely different lineup? It's what is in Marco's mind that makes him feel that we need to do so much work on defending that our forwards also have to do it, and not just from a natural perspective of press from the front, but Kevin doesn't get started until he basically gets pressured to start because of how much fans were getting on his back about Iwobi being on the left-hand side. Chukwueze still hasn't got a start because he prefers Wilson's tendencies to drop in and help, and especially around the central midfield. We're playing double pivots. These things make sense if you're terrified of losing and being absolutely steamrolled every game, as if you're already in the relegation mindset. But then you're playing Sessegnon, who's a natural attacking player at left back, instead of playing the centre back / left back Bassi in that role and dropping another centre back in Cuenca. If you were that worried about the defensive frailties of the team, you play the additional full-time defender and either drop Sessegnon or play him slightly further up the pitch, where he can do both jobs, drop back and attack. So what are we doing exactly? Where is the connection coming from? Where are the links in the play coming from? As Drew said, everything's out of balance. It's out of whack. Like the midfield especially. Yeah, great. Iwobi's in the top 10 players of chances created this season. That's terrific. Kevin's in the top 10 players, despite the fact that he's got barely any minutes under his belt, of successful take-ons this season. But to what end? We're not scoring the goals. Our top goal scorer is own goals. And if you take that away, it's Sessegnon, who's playing at left back. If we can't find someone who's going to score us 15 goals this season, it's not likely we're going to be in a position where we might stay up. That's always been a factor. It's been 40 points and someone to score 15 goals. So, that's what it used to be 20 years ago. Why has it changed now? Cool. So how can we make it so that we get in a position where we can get these goals? Go on, Drew.
So I just come back and saying you were saying, and it was quite noticeable a couple of times and I'm going back to the game, and I know we finished with the game, Ash, so please don't.
No.
But Sessegnon's tendencies to attack had clearly been spotted by Pickford.
Mm-hmm.
Because Pickford's distribution passing is very, very good.
Very good.
Yeah, and I'm not criticising Sessegnon for this because we all know Sessegnon instinctively is an attack-minded player.
Well, he scored from it last week. So you can't.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But the point I'm making positionally, he's not. He can get up, but he's not so great at getting back. And Everton clocked that. Yeah, and I've seen it a number of times when he's played. And this is Ryan. If you're watching this, we love you, man. Okay, but naturally you're not a left back. We can all see it, but Marco blatantly refuses.
Yep.
And it's interesting when we took control of the game in the second half. Yeah, that was pretty much. I'm willing to bet 90% of what the Fulham fan bases wanted to start with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Iwobi in the 8 to give him more space, which goes to AJ's point. Someone to run at them, which was King, and 2 proper wingers. Yeah. Yep. Marco is clearly a top flight manager, but I do wonder, and this is why I was being a bit too oblique when I said he needs to have a long, hard look at himself. I think he struggles to manage his emotions. I think he struggles. I think he struggles with pride. Yeah.
Yep.
I think he's incredibly stubborn.
Yep.
AJ made the point, and it was a good point about the changes we made at Newcastle. Again, the changes we made in the second half are the sort of changes that fans wanted to see.
Yep.
Yeah. But Newcastle countered them, and we didn't take our chances. I was standing next to someone at the game on Saturday, and in the second half, when that 20-minute spell, I said, if we score, yeah, I fancy us to go on and win.
Yeah.
But we didn't, and it just all evaporated. It just all evaporated.
It was the same at Newcastle.
Yeah, exactly. But we seem to be playing not to lose. Yeah, wingers
exactly that.
as wingers. Yeah, you spent all this money on Kevin. I think Chukwueze is. I mean, I'm sorry. I know we haven't seen a lot of him.
He looks incredible.
I will go out on a limb now and say, if we just sign one person in January, make his transfer permanent, because he is
make his transfer permanent and bring in one lone central midfielder, and I'd be okay with that window.
AJ, cool, whatever you say. But what I'm saying is,
yeah,
they are. You know, I love Cess, and I'd like to see Cess playing further forward. But if you're telling me you're going to start Chuck on the left and Kevin on the right, I'm as happy as Larry, because they're 2 orthodox wingers in orthodox positions. And going back to AJ's point, it's so slow. Oh, right footer on the left wing, left foot on the right wing. Let's check back in. Let's give the defence time to reset. Every single time. Oh, sorry.
If he has to be insistent on playing inverted wingers, get them behind the defence, not have them play in front of it. And if you're having Raul drop as deep as he is anyway, play him as a false 9. Let him play in a Firmino-style role when you had Salah, Firmino and Mane, with Mane and Salah basically just up the pitch. That was their job. They were the forwards. They were receiving the ball on the wing, cutting inside, getting goals in behind the defence. Do that if you're going to have Raul dropping this deep, if you're going to have inverted wingers. Otherwise, do what you said, Drew. Give wingers the opportunity to get onto their good foot and to get to the byline, which gives the rest of the team enough time to get into the box, especially Raul, who's quite frankly lacking a little bit at the moment.
Well, also stops the. It's
He's worn
also
out.
and Ash, and this is Ash's bugbear, and I'm not, just trying to wind him up here, but it's the pace. It's how slow we are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, Chuck and Kevin ain't slow.
No.
Yeah, they're not. They're not. So let them use their speed and let them, like you say, go, literally go wide, get to the byline. Get defenders facing their own goal, which they hate, but we don't. And this is why people like King and people like Cess and people like ESR. Not Wilson in this example, because I'm talking about playing Chuck and Kevin, but people that have got that natural timing and that instinct to get into the box and follow it in. Yeah. But I'm getting to the point now. Defensively, we're horrific. I don't know what's happened to Calvin Bassey, who I adore, but he's fallen off a cliff. Okay. We don't look like we can stop anyone, Ash.
No,
I mean,
for me,
you really made the point about the first goal, which was, like you said, 5 people around Anderson. I mean, how can that be right in your own box?
No, it's Sunday League defending. In fact, if you did that on a Sunday League pitch, you would get booted by the rest of your team in the changing room afterwards. So for me, I think Calvin Bassey's form and the African Cup of Nations being around the corner are heavily linked. I think there's a player who maybe doesn't want to push as much as he used to. Funnily enough, for me, Calvin Bassey's 3 best performances this season have come in games where he's actually been at left back or moved in. Having Koenka next to him has really helped it with that. I think Anderson and Bassey, Anderson more than Bassey. Bassey does it a couple of times. Loves to do these marauding quarterback style passes 45 yards across the pitch, which is fantastic if you've got wingers that are allowed to get ahead of their defenders. We don't. You make the point about playing players on their orthodox side. Kevin, for me, as great as he is and as skillful as he is, he's a little bit too one-footed. Unfortunately, that one-footed is right-footed. He's playing on the left wing. He has the skill to make up for it, so I'm fine with that. But all too many times this season, he's beat 3 men, got to the edge of the box, and there's no one in the box. So he has to cut back. And that is a pace issue. And you're right. One of my pet peeves is our pace and the pace we play at. We have 3 of the fastest players in the league currently, in Chukwueze, in Adama Traore, and Kevin. And none of them are allowed to use their pace. Adama, when he comes on, he's playing like a League 2 midfielder. In fact, I'm not going to say League 2 because he's been pocketed by 2 of those this season. Like he's not playing well enough to keep meriting being put on the pitch. The smart money was if Nottingham Forest offered us 20p for him during the summer, we should have fucking took it, right? Because he's just not. His whole thing is how quick he is. He has no footballing brain, and I think part of the problem is that everybody else on the pitch probably has too much of a footballing brain, and we can't free flow enough. And I think when we do free flow, when we do have those moments in games where it's quick 1-2-3 pass, through ball, shot, we look great. Cess's goal last week against Wolves, yes, it came from a bit of a mistake, but it was quick play that we scored from. Wilson's goal, quick out, first time shot, great bit of non-thinking, just have a go at football. It's those moments in games where we have to think that we struggle. And I think this is where many people are moaning about us looking turgid and looking it's really easy to defend against Fulham, as I keep saying, right? You just let us have the ball. Get yourself behind the ball and get yourself out. And you were perfectly right about Stess on Saturday, because I noticed it, that Everton were almost willing him up the pitch so that they can then win the ball back and just put it back to where he was. Because Everton's biggest skill, and I said it in the game preview, Everton's biggest asset was their 2 wingers. They had no problem getting the ball out there.
If Ndiaye had had a better game, we would have lost that 5 or 6 goals.
Well, we should have lost it.
We were very, very thankful that Ndiaye didn't have the performance he had a couple of weeks ago. against
Yes,
us.
exactly. For me at the moment, football is all too. Watching Fulham is too turgid. It's too rigid. It's too easy. You know, we've watched us struggle against two lower league teams in the cup, playing basically our first team, maybe 2 or 3 players different, but playing the same setup. Nothing's really changed. Every time any player shows any form of singularity that looks good, it's immediately punished by being dropped the next week. And there's a problem with that for me. You know, there is a real issue with me, I think, at the moment with the fight, determination, and personality that we're seeing on the pitch. And the one thing we've always had at Fulham, in my years, and Drew will probably agree with me because he would have seen some dark days too, where we've not always had the best teams. We've not always had the best players. But the one thing you can always guarantee is that we have fight and determination. And the 2 or 3 years we haven't had fight and determination, we've been relegated rather than promoted. Right? I've seen Fulham play in every division, getting up to the Premier League, and not all the time that was because of the players we had on the pitch. It was because of fight and determination. Seen us stay in the Premier League because of fight and determination. Saturday, I saw no fight. I saw no determination. As much as anyone wants to defend Marco Silva because of transfer windows in the past or injuries in the squad or anything that's happened, that's on him. He's the man who's meant to be creating that culture, and I've seen that slip. And arguably, it's been on the decline since February, and it's just got worse. The season started, we wanted to be super positive, but it's just got worse. And I don't want to lose Marco Silva. I've put it on the record many, many times. I respect and love the man for the job he's done at Fulham, massively so. But something needs changing at the moment, and the higher ups who probably could change the mindset are not going to. So he's the man who's likely to take the can. If he stays and he can turn it around, that'd be fantastic, right? But at the moment, I don't see where that's coming from. I don't see where that light is, and that's a real problem, you know. And we're really gonna have to worry about it. Luckily, we have an international break coming up this weekend. You know, not that many players away, other than those that are on, you know, last-minute World Cup duties. It is a time for us to recoup and to get back together. And we'll talk about this in our next episode because obviously we haven't got a game to prepare for where we can look at some of the things that we need to work on and some of the things that we need to fix. We've gone massively over tonight talking about this because it's such a hard topic to talk about. You know, anyone who follows any of us on Twitter would have seen we've all put our 2 pence in on these conversations over the weekend about how we feel about Marco Silva. I feel lost. There's a reason why we didn't record on Sunday night like we were probably meant to. And that was because I couldn't bring myself to record and talk about this because I feel lost about what I'm watching. And if as a football fan, I feel lost about what I'm watching, how do the players that are on the pitch feel? How are they seeing the light at the end of the tunnel? And this is where the conversation about Marco Silva's contract comes into line because none of us really know where we stand. We don't know if we got a Marco Silva that's like in the background going, yeah, I'm signing down the contract. Don't worry. It's just we're not talking about it the summer. Or if we got a Marco Silva going, I'm edging my bets here because if they go down, I can walk away. If we don't look great, I can walk away. You know, we just don't know what we're going to see. Lads, before we call it a day, do any of you have anything else you want to add about the situation at the moment, or are we just happy to move on and hope that we can sort of have a decent international break?
Listen, I have plenty more to say, but we'd be here for another hour and a half. So, Drew,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we could be here for quite a while, but I do feel that there's an increasing disconnect between Silva and the team, Silva and the fans. Never in his tenure has he been questioned so openly about his tactics and team selection. And like I said, it was quite telling that 20-minute spell on Saturday coincided with a lineup I think 90% of the Fulham fans would have picked before the game. And I'm with you, Ash. I hope he turns it around because he's worked very hard to rehabilitate his image. But I'm just wondering subconsciously whether he's checked out and now all of a sudden he's realizing, you know, what that's actually meant in terms of it manifesting itself. in terms of our morale and our results. Because, like you said, Ash, you know, we've never been the most talented, but we've always been together. But we got beaten on Saturday not because they were a better team, simply because they showed more desire and hustle. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah, you've raised. Go on, Ash.
No, it's fine.
I was going to say you've raised 2 points, Drew, that are interesting. One's whether or not Marco's already checked out, and you mentioned him rebuilding his reputation, and I wonder whether or not that's what he's terrified of. That things, if they continue in this form, will ruin the reputation he's rebuilt for himself. So his hyper focus is not losing games, which is causing even more grief.
It's AJ. That's a very good point. I mean, I don't know, but if Fulham go down, I mean, his release clause, I know, has deterred some teams, but I mean, some Fulham fans say, "Oh, well, you can't question him. He's great." Blah blah blah. Let's be honest, boys. If Spurs had come in the summer and said we're going to pay his release clause, he'd have been gone. Yeah. He turned all that money down for Saudi Arabia, and people say, "Oh, he turned down all the money." No, he turned down because it was Saudi Arabia. Because Marco Silva believes Marco Silva is a top flight European coach, and he wants to be in one of the top leagues. Yeah,
that was AC Milan, Napoli, something like that.
You know, the man has an ego, and he should have an ego. But we need to understand Marco Silva does not see, Marco Silva finishing out his career at Fulham. All right. But like you say, I'm wondering now if he's starting to realise he's checked out, and he's subconsciously undoing all the good work he's done, because other chairmen will be watching. Yeah, and if we're talking about it, you can be pretty sure they're talking about it. And okay, we're 3 unarmed Englishmen and we haven't got a clue because we know Marco says that we're all idiots. I accept that, but I know what I saw, and 3,000 other Fulham fans know what they saw on Saturday. You boys know what you saw on Saturday. Yeah, we're not all idiots. We can't all be wrong. No, we're not top flight UEFA coaches, but there's some fundamental issues here. And like Ash said at the top of the show, Marco Silva is integral to that. We all know about the structural issues at the boardroom, but you got to play with the cards you dealt, and he's not.
Yeah. Let's wrap it up.
We need to wrap it up. Obviously, look, we have got an international break coming up this weekend, so there's no match to preview. There's no match to talk about. I imagine over the week there's probably get some more of this conversation brewing up anyway. I imagine we're going to be talking about this in our next episode as we sort of look at maybe some of the fixes Fulham need to put in place that we can at our disposal at the moment, rather than, looking at January, looking further ahead. Lads, thanks for joining us. It's not an easy one. It's not an easy one to talk about. We're all very disappointed with the result on Saturday, not just because of the result, but because of, I think, what it meant more deeply than just one loss of 3 points or not getting 3 points. I think we're starting to see something unravel, and that's where it becomes a bit concerning, because we've been here before, and it's not a nice place to be. Lads, enjoy your week. We'll see you for the next one. Not really much more to say other than come on, you Whites. Have a good week.